Okay, in this video, we're going to get a little physical, right? Physics. We're going to add some physics to an object to kind of understand some of what you need to understand here. So consider our sphere right now. Here's our sphere, and if I go into my preview, my game, it's just standing, it's floating in the midair. If I go, I will, well, that's a little high, but if it wasn't so high and it was more down on the ground here, right? I can, you'll see that it has no real physical properties. I can walk right through it, right? So obviously we don't want that, right? So what can we do? So I'm gonna actually move it off the ground just a little bit here. Let me pan, see, get myself down a little bit here, just so that the ball's not too high. I want the ball to be off because I want to show you something. So basically, what we need to do is make this sphere into what's called a rigid body. And so a rigid body has the properties of physics applied to them. So let's go to add component, and in here we search for rigid body. And I'm just going to use this one right here, the normal one. Okay, so we have this right here. Now I want you to notice another thing that the sphere already came with, and this is called a sphere collider, right? And so the collider is should work in coincidence with a rigid body to figure out how, when then two rigid bodies connect, what happens. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play, and let's see what happens. Now, did you notice how the ball just went and fell right through the floor? Okay, so something's going on there. Basically, it just has something to do with the sphere collider. To fix that, we would go ahead and just uncheck is trigger. Now, when we uncheck is trigger, right, we'll see the ball just falls down, thuds, and is there. And further, right, I go through it. I'm kicking it now. Look at me kick the ball because it's a sphere, so that has a special type of collider, right? And it knows that a sphere can roll, right? And we can obviously set various properties of this ball. What is its mass? What is its drag? There's things here that we can set to change that ball to much heavier. If I put 7 in, maybe then I couldn't exactly kick it. We'll see what happens here, right? I could kick it, but it doesn't move as much, right? Now, that's not the only type of collider. Obviously, that only works on a sphere. We can have things of, let's add a new object, 3D object, a cube, and here we have a new cube, right? And this one, let's actually change its scale. Let's make it kind of a wall, if you will, right? I'm gonna go ahead and get it down to the ground. I don't really have to worry about how thick it is, right? It's gonna be a wall. I'll just put it up here higher. Let me move that up. We're good, right? That might fall through the floor. So I'm gonna go ahead and make sure I don't have it. I'm gonna go ahead and position it on the ground, right, by saying 0. Whoops, no, we have to go 0, divide it by half of its scale. So if its scale is, let's make it scale 4 to make the math easy. Oops, 4. Let's give it 2. There we go, that should be on the ground. Right? Now again, if I go ahead and I just click play, where's my wall? There's my wall. And so if I move over to it, right, this naturally has some collision on it, right? So whenever you place an object, you have to look at what kind of collision it has on it. So if we inspect our cube, whoops, let's get out of the scene, turn it off. We see it has this thing called a box collider on it, right? And a box collider is what we're going to use a lot to make our objects so that when we hit into them, they, obviously they kind of don't let us walk right through them. And you'll have to pay attention if your object, because next we're going to import external 3D models, and they won't by default have these colliders and things on them. So we have to know that. So I want you now to try, right? First of all, try drawing out a box. And second, try on our sphere adding, right, rigid body and a sphere collider. Actually, before you make your sphere and your thing with physics, I want to address one more thing about the sphere collider, or really just any collider, and that's material here. Because if you noticed, when we hit play, right, our object just kind of hit with a thud, right? And we can control that. You know, by default, an object should maybe, it could bounce or it could hit with a thud. You have to really think about the material that the object is. So I'm actually going to change the mass, and I'm going to change the drag to 1, and just kind of figure out, see what that looks like, just to see. Now it still just hits with without any real motion. So what we could do is we could change the material. Now these come in the standard assets. These are physical materials. And so let's try making it rubber. I'm just going to double click to enter that. I'll hit play. And there you saw some bounce there, right? Now this can be controlled completely by how you change the mass. So if I put a mass of 8 and a drag of 1, right? Let's see how that looks. Didn't really change that too much. So maybe what I'm looking for is something even bouncier. Well, there's one called bouncy. And now let's see what happens with this. We'll see, now we see a nice kind of more gradual bounce, right? So these are things we can do with physics. And now you know. Now, are you going to have a lot of use for this? I don't know. But it's possible.